Welcome to the 2022 Falkirk Model Railway Show, held at the Grangemouth Stadium over the 19th and 20th of November. In all, there were 28 layouts on display. I have split the videos into 3 parts. This is part 1 of 3. Each layout has its own YouTube chapter mark, which means if you expand the description, you will be able to jump to a specific layout. Okay, so you join us now on the layout Yorkshire Pennines, which is an N Gauge layout, and I'm here with Roland. What was the inspiration behind it?
Well, we've seen a layout before that operated on 2 levels, N Gauge, and was visible, viewed from the full 360 degrees, and we rather like that. So they say the best form of flattery is imitation, so we had to go at doing it ourselves, although we kept it a bit small. This is 10 foot by 5 foot, this one, and it's that size, so it fits in my garage at home.
What sort of era is it set in?
Post 2000, little bit of operator's license here, modeller's license here. We cheat a little bit. The top layout is the top circuit are supposed to be a preserved railway, and the lower track is mainline. And as in real world, there's access between the two, and so we can see a little bit of movement to and from the two different levels. One end of the curve is our fiddle yard, if you want, so it's visible and it's scenic.
Fascinated by the screens, the computer screens that you've got here. Can you tell me a little bit about those?
Okay, it is obviously a DCC layout. All the N Gauge locos have their own sounds. What we wanted to do was show really how the hobby is moving forward into the 21st century. So now there's lots of different computer systems that can drive model railways. We've chosen one here, and the idea was to show visitors to the shows just what is now available. So we're using the computer to help us drive 11 trains simultaneously on the layout. The idea being there's something always moving. The control system is Digitrax DCC, just the same as it's a regular DCC system, and the computer just adds to that. Think about it as a rather sophisticated throttle. So as well as the normal throttles for driving the locos, then you just plug the computer in with its software, and that takes over just as a throttle would. The only thing is, of course, the computer can do more than one thing at once, more than we humans can cope. So that's why we can get so many things moving at once. On the layout here, there's 51 points, and if you were trying to drive from each individual track, you have to obviously look ahead and make sure your points are changed. By the time you've done that, your train's been stationary for a while, and once again, visitors are saying nothing's moving. But once again, the computer can do things far faster than we can. It can change all the points, blink of an eye, and drive the trains all at the same time.
What about operation? It looks like it's just one man that can operate.
It can be just one man. My brother Steve's doing it now, and all he is doing is telling the computer to start whatever timetable he's picked. However, we can tell the computer just to do half the layout, and we can control the other half with normal throttles. And we do that on a regular basis, and we let visitors, drive part of the layout whilst the computer's driving the other half. The clever thing is the software will wait for you as you drive your train manually. It'll pause its operation if one of your trains is in its way. When we're at a show, you'll probably notice the placed chairs that we can actually sing out to him, but you can also probably see there's a mirror above the layout, so Steve can sit there and you can actually see the far side of the layout, no problems at all.
That's a good idea, yeah.
And if something goes wrong when you have to show, the visiting public normally say, you've got a problem over here, but they keep you informed, don't they?
Of course they do. And the scenics, is that scratch built or kit?
Yeah, it's all scratch built. There's I think 4 single boxes that are from the box. Everything else is scratch built, and that's thanks to Acom Models in York.
Oh yeah.
A member of the club, and he's built all these, and they're taken from photographs and real plans. So that's Robin Hood's Bay station building up there.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
No problems at all.
So you join us on Studio Tour, which is a 00 and a 009 track, and I'm here with Janice and her husband Miles, who put this layout together. So what was the inspiration behind all this?
I'm a huge Harry Potter fan, and after visiting the studio tour in London a couple of times and getting the Hogwarts Express for Christmas, I decided I wanted to do my own layout.
Okay. Did you want to have all the Harry Potter features that you've seen in the films, or how did it work out?
Yes, I've read the book several times, watched the movies several times, and for me the most important thing was for Harry Potter fans to look round the layout and pick out all the different props that they would find in all the movies.
Okay.
And if you're not a Harry Potter fan, hopefully it still creates a lot of interest. The Hogwarts Express, I got that for Christmas 2019. The buildings are scratch built, all the Hogsmeade Village and the Borough. These were Metcalf for Diagon Alley, but we 3D printed some various props and windows and just cannibalised them.
I noticed that some of the buildings look like they're actually stage props. So that's what you've gone for, is it? The
Yes.
actual behind the tour sort of thing?
Yes, exactly. It's the back lot like you would find in Disneyland or something, where it's just false backs and the fronts.
So do you have any like hidden characters that the kids can look for?
Oh, yes. There's lots of hidden things. There's Dumbledore. We have the Deathly Hallows. We've got the Sorting Hat. There's a huge list of things that you can find. So,
How big is it?
it's about 9 foot by approximately 4 foot.
And how many boards is that?
3. Yeah.
So does that fit in a car, or is it?
No long wheelbase transit. Just with about an inch to spare. Miles built all the woodwork and laid the track and ballasted it. He 3D printed lots of little props, and he made the station as well. And the castle, he 3D printed that, which I just painted. But everything else, all the carving, scenics, is all me.
So did you have any kits to work from, or were you all just scratch building everything from like what you've seen on the movies?
All the middle board area, that's all scratch built. The Hogsmeade station, that's a kit, and Diagon Alley is a kit that was a basis, but we have changed lots of features and added bits on. It's a simple track. It's DCC at the top for the 00 scale, and the 009 scale is just DC. There's a Magna rail at the back where the boat's going round. It's all really simple to operate, so ideal for anybody who wants to set it up from home.
So is this your first go at really getting involved in a layout?
Yeah. Yeah, it's my first layout, so I'm quite proud of myself, really.
Did you enjoy putting it together?
Yes, lots of blood, sweat and tears, but I'm quite an arty, crafty person, so for me the actual modelling was right up my street.
How long did it take to do?
To build it all,
Yeah.
just under 3 years. That's not full time, it was just mainly weekends. Some weeks we were there quite a lot if we had lots to do. I still have the initial plans. It's not much different from what I originally wanted to make. Middle board mainly has changed, but the boards 1 and 3, they're basically the same as what I wanted. But you can never stop building. You still add bits in. That's been a labour of love.
So you join me on East Dock, which is an O gauge layout by Peter Shields. So what was the inspiration behind the layout, Peter?
There wasn't inspiration as such. It was actually started as a test track, and then with the points on, just to test locos that I'd been working on, or chipping or something like that. And then I just had the idea, converted it to a layout, just put some scenery on, put some buildings on, and things like that. Easy. The layout at the moment is 8 foot long, two 3 foot boards, the scenic boards, and about 2 feet for the fiddle yard. But I'm going to extend it because the fiddle yard doesn't work the way I really want it to. I'm going to convert that area in the fiddle yard into a scenic section with a point on it, and then build another fiddle yard on the end, and then work it from the back rather than the front.
How wide is it?
Oh, about 18 inches.
What's the control, DC or DCC?
DCC with an NCE power cab.
And is that controlling points as well?
No, the points are controlled by a little box, which I'm going to have to rebuild as well. Transformer and just the switches in there. The points are Tortos, slow acting point motors. All the points are Pico, very heavily modified.
And what about your scenery? Is that scratch built or kits or what?
Well, it's kits. They're all done by a mate of mine, Gavin Thurkel of Stony Bridge Structures. We worked together on the design of the kits, and he produced them, laser cuts them, and then I put them together and paint them and dirty them up. And they're all models of buildings that actually existed in and around this area of Sunderland. The shed is a cut-down version of South Dock Shed. That's why it's called East Dock. The buildings are all buildings that were around the area.
Your track, what is it?
It's all Pico. It's all just Pico on a cork base, and then just built up with lots of scenic stuff. The concrete base is actually polyfiller. A lot of time was spent getting that flat and sanding it down and then toning it down. But the rest is just the usual thing, stuck it down by, usually a lot of small stuff. A lot of N Gauge ballast was used, and then to get the effect of ash ballast.
And your stock, where's that from?
Well, all the big diesels are all Helgen, and the shunters, the O8s, are Dduallt. They're all DCC fitted, sound fitted.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
You join me on an OO9 scale narrow gauge layout called Dduallt. I'm here with David, who is going to tell me a bit more about the layout. What was the inspiration behind the layout?
Well-known modeller Don Boreham suggested that we ought to do a narrow gauge Welsh layout, and my son was the one who basically had this idea of doing this Dduallt, and it started from that.
How big is it?
It's a total area of 10 foot by 10 foot, 10 foot square.
And how many boards is that?
4 plus 2, 3 boards, no, 4 boards plus 2 fiddle yard boards.
And the fiddle yard is off to one side at the...
There's a fiddle yard at each end. It's an end-to-end layout with fiddle yards at each end.
Right, and how is it controlled, DC or DCC?
It is DC, although we do run the odd DC locomotive on it, sound locomotive on it.
Right. And points, are they electrically controlled or?
Electrically controlled.
Right. Track work, what's that?
Pico,
Okay.
009. Crazy track, as it used to be called, or it is called. Most of the carriage stock is scratch built, so it's built from styrene. 1 or 2 kits by Worsley Works. Most of the locos are kit-built, brass kit-built locos, either backwards miniatures. There are 1 or 2 Langley kits and 1 or 2 Chivers kits. But now there's 1 or 2 proprietary models coming in as well, like the Bachmann Double Fairley and the Pico Cato Princess.
Operation of the track, is it one person or is it normally 2?
Normally have 2 or 3, at least 3.
The scenics, which are very impressive, I mean, is that all scratch built?
Yes.
You say you've had this now for what, 30 years?
It's about 30 years, coming up 30 years old.
And it's stood the test of time, has it?
It's done over 110 exhibitions, both in this country and abroad.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
I appreciate it. And,
Pleasure.
Dalby Lane by the Bonnybridge Model Railway Club was modelled in OO gauge. The layout depicts a fictional small maintenance depot situated on a freight-only branch line, running off the Midland Main Line in Leicestershire. It is set around 2015 to 2020. Although owned and operated by Coeur Rail Freight, it also provides basic servicing, minor repairs and refuelling to other operating companies. So locomotives from DRS, GBRF, Freightliner and others are frequent visitors. The buildings, fuel tank and most of the tools and equipment in the yard are all scratch built. It uses Pico Code 75 track with only 1 point in the scenic section and Code 100 with 2 points in the sector plate fiddle yard. It is DCC controlled using the Gauge Master Prodigy system, either Advance or Express. Most locos are sound fitted. Future plans are to fit a ground signal to the entrance to the workshop and to fit lighting to the buffer ends. Levenbank, modelled in N Gauge and exhibited by Glenrothes Model Railway Club. Levenbank is a fictitious station on the ScotRail region of the East Coast Main Line. Passenger trains from other regions run through the station, which is set in the post-privatisation era, 1995 onwards, with 4 through running lines and 2 terminal lines. The station has 2 island platforms where express trains can stop or run through, with the local services using the terminal platforms. A freight line runs either side of the passenger lines, allowing for passenger freight trains should the platform lines be occupied. The station is a modern building built on raised ground above the platforms. Freight trains drop off or pick up wagons at the cement works, container terminal or freight sidings, or can pass through the whole length of the layout. The small container terminal serves the local businesses in the Levenbank area. Sidings serve the track engineering workshop and DMU servicing depot. The cement works has a dispatch shed for loading cement tankers or bagged products into vans under cover. There are also sidings for rakes or wagons to be externally loaded, such as hoppers for gravel and sand traffic. Empty wagons are held in the storage sidings until required. A tram shuttle service from Levenbank to the station, sports centre and market garden runs regularly. So you join me on Swinton TMD. This is a 00 layout and I'm here with Michael, who's going to hopefully answer a few questions for me. So what was the inspiration behind all this, Michael?
Well, very sadly, my dad passed away of cancer last year, and he was always into his model railways, and me and him planned to build a layout together, and we never got round to it. So we thought we'd get this built as a sort of tribute, memorial. So it came with the baseboards, just the baseboards and the track and the back scene, and then all the scenery I did myself.
How big is it?
It is 10 foot long by 6 feet, just 2 boards, just 1 scenic board and 1 smaller fiddle yard board.
Well, what's controlled, DCC or DC?
It's DCC controlled, and most locals feature sound as well, so there's a lot of variation that can happen with the operation and running of the layout.
It's what, modern era type stock, is it?
It's modern era, roughly 2015 to the current day, and it's mostly DRS and Cola stock that features, along with some network rail stuff. Just single person operated for now, just with the 1 controller, but it can be handy for 1 other person to move the stock in and out of the fiddle yard and things. But at the moment it's 1 person operated.
And what about your scenery? Is that sort of kit built or scratch built?
A lot of it is kit built. The sheds are kit built. There's a few, like this one here, and the fuel point, and some of the buildings are Backman Scenecraft buildings. There's a couple of Hornby Scaledale buildings as well, but mostly it is kit built stuff.
And what about your track? Is that Pico?
Pico's Code 100 track throughout. Yes.
And is that points as well? Pico
That's
points?
Points as well, yes.
So are they DCC controlled?
No, they're not. They're analog controlled. They're just wired through normal relay point motors, and the signals, there's working signals on it as well, ground signals, and they're controlled through the controller.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Yeah, I'm Stan Moog. I'm with the Perth Model Railway Group. Today we're exhibiting our layout to the Coeur d'Alene Railway, which is an American-themed layout. The rather interesting thing about this layout is its unusual scale to gauge ratio. It's modelled in 1/4 inch to the foot scale, which is O gauge on double O gauge track. In this case we use the Pico narrow gauge track. So the correct classification for this scale is ON30. The railway is set in the USA in the state of Idaho in the 1930s and represents the small town of Rockford Bay, which is on the edge of the lake, to depict a ferry terminal. The ferry terminal can be seen on the right hand side of the layout and features a tug and a barge which is being loaded with wagons. So the main industries in this town are lumber and mining. So there's also a very scant passenger service. The line is built primarily to handle freight. So you can see various shunting manoeuvres and loading of trains on and off the barge. There's also an off-scene fiddle yard to depict the rest of the line. This layout is quite old. In fact, it was built a number of years ago by one of our members and uses DC control analogue. So the locomotives are conventionally controlled using gauge master controllers. The locomotives are all from Bachmann, and the rolling stock also similarly from Bachmann, with a few kit built items as well. The main scratch building on this layout is actually the town itself. The buildings are mostly scratch built or kit built, but with lots of modifications. In this scale it's possible to use real timber to model architecture. So the fun is in fact taking timber and modelling it. So, and of course in America in the 1930s timber was very, very plentiful and most of the buildings were constructed such. This layout actually is very easy to assemble and very easy to operate, which gives us lots of interaction time with the general public. On the left-hand end of the layout, as viewed, there's a coal loading hopper as well, which is very interesting. The children in particular love watching the train being loaded. So from a mechanical and electrical point of view, the layout is very, very, very simple and works really well.
So you join me now on Falcon Road, which is an O gauge layout, and I'm here with Ian. What was the inspiration behind the layout, Ian?
It started with my previous layout, which was called Haymarket Cross, which was a double O layout, and I did one of the worst things possible. I went and bought an O gauge A4 because I always wanted one, and I thought, oh no, I've got to start now and go over to O gauge. So eventually sold the double O layout and started collecting the locomotives that we see here today, and decided to build another layout that was literally based on the Haymarket Cross idea.
What era is it set in?
I've done it in an era that I remember well as a train spotter back in the early 60s, 61, 62, which was the start of the transition period where you've got your diesels coming in, get all your new diesels like the Deltics and the Class 40s, the rolling stocks, all based on the eastern and northeastern region of British Railways in the early 60s.
I last saw this layout 2020 in Doncaster, and since then it's grown a bit. Can you tell me what you've added to it?
What we've done is, through the 2 years of COVID where we were locked down literally, I decided that I was going to build a small shed at one end of the layout. So I took one of the fiddle yards off that we had at one end and replaced it with 3 more boards, and we've built a 2-road northeastern pattern engine shed, and it's basically a stabling point for the steam and diesel locos. The idea was as well, we already had a tunnel on the layout that runs from one end to the other. It was for allowing locos to be sent back without having to be turned or anything at the other end. So we use that now for the freight trains. We have a couple of freight trains that we run. One is a coal train and one is some box vans. And we go to a siding at the far end of the shed, and then another loco couples up on the back and pulls it all the way back down the tunnel where people can't see it, back to the other end where the fiddle yard is.
With the extension, how big is it now?
The whole length is 32 foot.
And how many boards was that one?
I think there's 8 boards.
What is it, DCC or DC?
It's full DCC, Digitrax, and we're using tortoise point motors, which can be operated either via the handset or by push buttons. At the moment, we're using it as handsets because we don't have a lot of points. I think in the shed area, I think there's about 5 or 6 lots of points, but some of them are double points but work together.
So with the handsets, do you have operators at both ends then?
Yes, we can operate the layout from both ends. In the middle, we've put sockets on the front of the layout as well, so that what we try to do is get, especially children, we try to get those involved in running the trains when they come to have a look. We try to get them having a go at moving the locos, sounding the whistles or the horns on the diesels, and the children love it when they can have a go and see how to work the digital layout. Rolling stock, we've got some kit-built locomotives, DJH, Gladiator, and 1 or 2 others that I'm not quite sure of the manufacturer, but most of the Pacifics that I've got are LH Lovelace, Golden Age models, 55H and fine scale brass. Fine scale brass 55H are the same people. John Riley, who runs that, great guy to deal with. One of the last ones I've had is Britannia, which I had to wait 18 months for. You had to order it in advance, and then John wanted to know exactly which one you wanted, so when it was manufactured in Coeur, it was the exact right tender on it, the right smoke deflectors, and it's a beautiful loco. They are really nicely made. All the scenics are scratch built. My own ideas for terrace houses. I made the signal box based on one that I saw in East Yorkshire, which is a northeastern pattern one. The cars we've got on there are a mixture of different ones. They're 1/43rd scale cars, but I've got at one end I've got a Lotus and Morgan garage in honour of my late brother, who used to restore Morgans for a living. I used to have a Lotus, and we used to always be at each other's, having a go at each other about which is the best cars. So I've done a garage with his name on it, and I've filled it with Lotuses and Morgans, and a lot of people are really interested in it as well when they come and look at it.
Great, okay, thanks Ian. I mean, I really appreciate that.